Let's get started. You guys can see the screen that says using Canvas rubrics to assess student learning outcomes. Somebody give me a thumbs up if they can see that. All right, great, wonderful. So today, Enrique, our SLO coordinator, and myself, and we're gonna run through this. It's kind of a high-level overview again of the idea of well, we're going to talk a little bit about rubrics. We're going to talk about SLO outcomes. We're going to talk about this idea of integration. Right? So my theme in the kind of three different things that I've done today is all about the idea of integration. And at some point, we're going to be talking about how we're going to take information from Curricunet and be able to pass it into Canvas, specifically related to the outcomes for your course SLOs, and then how you will be able to potentially use those within your Canvas shell to be able to do your assessments. So, Enrique, you were going to say something? I'm sorry.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. All right. So let me move folks out of the way there. All right. So our objectives for today, we're going to introduce, oh my goodness, it's doing it again. Okay, it's got a 5-second delay thing on it, and I don't have that many slides, so we're gonna put up with it. So for today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna introduce outcomes and rubrics within the Canvas environment. We're gonna talk a little bit about what outcomes are and the different levels and that kind of thing. And then we're gonna discuss the potential integration, as I said, of Curricunet and the SLO assessment process that can be established within Curricunet, and how that would work in the Canvas environment. We don't have those tools yet. They're all part of what the platform is. And so as we move forward and actually developing the module around the SLO assessment process, then we'll have some conversations and additional training on how you can actually take that information from the Canvas environment, for instance, to put it into the Curricunet environment, so that you're not having to do re-entry and then create Word documents or PDFs to get sent here and there. And we'll talk about more about integration. So those are our objectives. And again, I don't think we'll go the whole time today. Lots of cheers and lots of clapping there when I said not going the whole time. Huh? Look at Porteous. Porteous is over there laughing at me, I can tell. So when we talk outcomes, right? You know, typically people say, well, you know, it's a student learning outcome, right? But we have different kinds of outcomes and different levels of them. So there's the course level outcome, right? Sometimes called CSLO, course student learning outcomes. And then you have program level outcomes, which again are simply taking those course level ones, and then, you know, they roll up into what the outcomes are for your overall program. And again, faculty decide on, you know, what outcomes they want from a course level perspective. Then they have discussions about how those course level outcomes then feed into what we would consider to be program level outcomes. And then obviously we take the program level outcomes and we roll those up into, from all the programs, into institution level outcomes. So part of the trick here, obviously, is making sure that we're doing the assessments at that course level, and that those are feeding up into the program level, and then we're assessing at a program level, and then taking those and feeding them into institutional ones. And so we run into challenges around the idea of testing, right? Whether or not our institution level outcomes are actually being achieved, right? And so I'm going to show you here in 1 second about the institutional level outcomes and what they are, and then how those are broken down. And then we'll get into looking specifically at, let's say, course level ones, for instance. Enrique, you want to add anything at this point?
No, I just want to iterate what you said is you have to look at this as a ladder, you know, effect type of thing. I know SCCJ, she wants us to start looking at the course level, programs level, and institutional level, and how they tied to each other and how they're relevant to each other. And that's very important. We have to assess our course level outcomes, our programs level outcomes, and institutional learning outcomes. So they're all tied and related with each other.
And so in this particular case, I'm going to show you what are the institution level ones, and then we'll have a little bit of a breakdown of the individual. Sorry, it keeps doing that. I forgot to take off the 5-second advance thing. All right, so at the institutional level, we have 4 institution level outcomes. One's around communication, one's around community critical thinking, one's around community and global awareness, and then personal, academic, and career development, right? So we have these really broad concepts, outcomes that we want our students to be able to achieve. But the question is always, how do you actually measure them, right? We can measure critical thinking, let's say at the course level, and then potentially with the program level. But if not all of the programs are measuring critical thinking, then how do you assume that just because some programs can assess and determine what the level of critical thinking is or the skills students are achieving, how does that roll up into this larger picture of the institution wanting all of our students to have the ability to think critically, right? So this is kind of the challenge associated with the way that we're doing business now, and we want to change that as we move forward. And again, the CurricuNet system and this type of integration is going to help us potentially to be able to meet that. So these are what we also call the ISLOs, right? And each of these is broken down to additional areas, or what you might call an emphasis, and ways in which we can measure these types of things. So I'm going to take a look at communication, for instance. And this is going to go forward in 5 seconds, and then I'll go back. All right, there we go. Sorry, again, that's annoying. I apologize. All right, so the ISLO around communication, right, is further defined as the ability for students to demonstrate knowledge of social, cultural, environmental, and aesthetic perspectives, right? Now, way in which we might be able to do, or what we're expecting them to be able to demonstrate is, be able to examine individual and group responsibilities in society and participate in active citizenship. Okay, great. Tell me, how is there one way to measure those kinds of things? Can I ask one question of a student to see whether or not they have an understanding of these types of things? I really doubt it. I don't think there's one question. That was kind of a rhetorical question there, and I know Scott was going to jump in and answer it there real quick. Scott, you just happen to be on the screen at the same time, and so I'm seeing you. That's why I'm giving you a hard time, man. Sorry. Right? So what we need to do, obviously, we need to assess this kind of thing at multiple points throughout that student's career, or throughout each of the courses that we have, or in the ways that we're doing certain kinds of things from an institutional perspective, so that we can determine whether or not we are effectively, and if we all agree that communication is a good objective for, or a good outcome for our students to meet, right? Then we have to be able to measure that, right? And so again, this comes down to faculty doing this kind of assessment at the course level, and then we analyze that, and then we evaluate, and we roll that up into the program level, and then all the programs are doing it, and then we roll that up into our institution level, right? And so we've been having some discussions around how it is that we can actually evaluate this, right, the overall assessment process. And again, if we can do this where you all are doing this at the course level, and then we move that up, how do we actually recognize that we've done it, right? Well, we've been talking about ways of using badging, for instance, right? Achieving badging at certain critical points in a student's progression through their education, right? And they pass a certain number of courses, or these courses can be agreed upon as, meeting the critical thinking skill set, right? Then we might be able to establish badging so that we institutionally can then say, oh, look, 90% of our students are, getting the critical thinking badge, and only 65% are getting the global awareness badge. Okay, then maybe we need to do some more work in that particular area, right? But right now, We don't really have an idea. We only have an idea down at the course and program level. Now, as Enrique mentioned, this is an accreditation thing, right? The process, right, is the accreditation. We need to do the assessment, right? They don't tell us what kind of assessment. They don't tell us what level, for instance, we have to have in terms of skills attainment for students. You know, every student must pass their outcomes at 80%. No, they don't do that, right? What they say is we need to be critically evaluating and assessing, right, these outcomes so that we can use them as part of that continuous improvement process. And for any of these who joined my earlier sessions, I said continuous improvement multiple times, right, as part of the program review process. Well, the SLO assessment process is also a critical component of this overall idea of how we take everything that we do and evaluate it towards meeting our overall outcomes, our goals, right? Okay, so let's move to looking at course level, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Go back. Okay. So moving down to the lowest level of this at the course level, CSLO, for instance, or SLO sometimes called. I happen to be picking on COM 1 today because I also use that in the demonstration inside of Canvas. So for COM 1, right, there are 2 outcomes. Number 1, critically evaluated delivered speech. And number 2, organize, develop, and deliver an effective speech. Okay. All right, so these have been established by the faculty member. They're part of the course outline of record. And so these are the ones that they utilize, right? And so then they're going to evaluate how well a student can do these things. How well does a student critically evaluate and deliver speech, or organize, develop, and deliver an effective speech? Right? And so now what we're going to do is we're going to jump over into Canvas, right? And I'm going to show you what this looks like from within the Canvas environment. Right? Did you want to say something, Enrique? Sorry.
Yes, real quick. And we'll go back to the slide, Don. Did you have?
Okay, sorry.
And it's just to add or piggyback on Don's comments, it's really important and essential for us to look at these outcomes and see if they're working, and if they're not relevant to the program. And this is the time where you want to, you know, rethink about your outcomes. Do they fit? Do they have a ladder effect? Do they fit into the program? Do they fit into the institutional learning outcomes? Because we do need to show evidence that we are mapping those SLOs to a program, and also from a program to a institutional learning outcome. So just we start rethinking that, but that's a conversation for later on, and I can go with that with you. But keep in mind, this is just, we're doing a bird's eye view, an overview. We're not going into details. With that being said, I can assist you with that, but I just want to throw that in there, Don.
All right, thank you, Enrique. I appreciate it. Again, as Enrique mentioned here, we will be getting, and most of you have done this if you've mapped your CSLOs to your program level. We used to do that inside of TrackDat, and then we stopped using TrackDat, and then we were going to try to use Illumin, but we were having so many problems with the product that we decided to get rid of it. It appears to be a much easier process in looking at mapping the SLOs to the program level and being able to then account for those inside of CurricuNet. We've seen several examples of it, and given that our current curriculum module seems to be 10 times easier than what we were using before, I'm confident that the SLO module, the program review modules, these are going to be easier for us to use, more effective in the way that we're actually using the results of those to make changes to the institution. So I'm looking forward to the next steps in all of this. All right, so let's jump in, and I'm going to show you, let's see, I'm going to stop that one and get rid of that. Let's see here. In the slideshow. Okay, sorry, let me share this other one. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you can see Canvas. You see Canvas? All right, great. All right, so we'll close that one out. All right. So again, just as I happen to have administrative level rights to Canvas, so I'm going to see a lot of stuff that you wouldn't normally see. Okay. But one of the things I want to talk about, I'm just actually in the administrative function of the Fresno City College sub account for Canvas. And so when I go into here, for instance, then I see various navigational tools that you won't see normally. Now, so one of the things that we can do, and I'm just going to show you this again as a kind of a high level overview of what is possible. Okay, we haven't done this fully. This is something I'm hoping that we can have some further conversation about and then develop into a way that will make you utilizing rubrics, right, and outcomes within your assessment process in Canvas easier for you to be able to do. Right? And so one of the ways that that might happen is there is a place called outcomes. Right? And you'll see that I've already done some of these. I established groups or areas for course level, institutional, and program level outcomes. And so in this case, I'll just go into the institutional level outcomes, and you'll see here, these are the ones I just showed on the slide: communication, community and global awareness, critical thinking, and personal academic. Okay? So if I click on communication, you can see I have all of the information about the ISLO in the system, right? And so this is one of those things when we talk about, rolling up or mapping from CSLO to PSLO to ISLO, right? This is the kind of tool that's going to help us be able to do that. If you all as faculty members then would utilize at the course level in your assessment process, the course level outcomes, and those are mapped to the program level and the program to the ISLO, then it makes it much easier for us to determine whether or not we institutionally are meeting the ISLO. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about rubrics as well. But so what I did was I went in and I simply established the communication. This is the information that I showed you in that screen before. Okay. There are different methodologies in which we can calculate. And so I'll just show you those real quick. Okay. There's a decaying average method. There's a number of times method. There's a most recent score method, or there's the highest score method. And we can have different areas or levels of the matrix, right, or of the rubric itself. If we utilize terms like exceeds expectations, that's worth 5 points, let's say. Now, all of this is variable and or customizable. Right? We can do all of these things. I'm just showing you what kind of the potential of all of this is. Right? So a total of, say, 5 points. Now, again, we can establish where the mastery is, if it's at 3 or 2 or 4. Right? We can establish different, you see the insert buttons here. You can establish different criterion ranges. So you're not limited here. I want you to understand you're not limited necessarily to what you're seeing on the screen here. These are just ways in which this would happen. Now, you are not going to determine the ISLOs, right? Institutionally, we're going to do that. But at the program level and at the course level, you as faculty members, along with your discipline faculty, would be working on that and making those kinds of decisions. Right? Questions so far? Anything?
Done.
Enrique, anything? Yeah.
Yeah, just keep in mind when you do the criteria for rating, don't be stuck on the, I need to do how many points do I need to do it. It's best practice is 5 to 4 points the most, but you don't have to go by points. You can just go exceed expectations, meet expectations. But if you want to use the grading, then you have to use the points. If you want to your matrix to be calculated and graded, then you have to use points. Just FYI.
Right. And I'm going to show that a little bit when we look further at actually establishing a rubric within an assessment within the environment. So again, as Enrique pointed out, these are simply indicators, a scale, a range for you, right? 5 doesn't have to equate necessarily to an A, right? But if they've shown the overall skills and you think it's a 5 out of 5, then obviously you can do that. Or you can change these scales. You click the edit button and we change the names, we can change all of this stuff, right? So, okay. I'm just showing you kind of what it looks like. Let me go look at the course level outcome. So I went into the course level outcomes and I created one for accounting 4A, and they have 3 of them, and I used COM1 and they have 2 of them. And I showed you these in the slide: critically evaluate and delivered speech, and then organize, develop, and deliver an effective speech. Okay, so let's look at critically evaluate. All right. So in this particular case, right, what I did was I brought the SLO in from the course outline of record. What I'm going to be working on as we move into the future here is to pull all of them into this system, so that you're not having to go out to the COR and grab what the SLO is and stick it into this, right? You'll just be able to go to the drop-down box and pick yours for your course and put it in, right? So,
Don, and that's so great. Don, is that's sorry, and that is so great because I get a lot of emails. Enrique, can you send me my SLOs? I don't know my SLOs. I'm a new faculty. I don't know my SLOs. This too will automatically be in your Canvas.
Yeah, and that's kind of the beauty of this. At this point, it's not done, folks. We're working on it. We just got our curriculum modules done. Once that's done, now I can start talking about integration between Canvas and Curricunet for that particular purpose, so that I can feed those in. And then as they become active, then they're update, and then you don't have to worry about it. Similar to what we've been trying to do with simple syllabus, is to pull those SLOs directly into the environment, so you're not having to figure out what is the course description or objectives or outcomes, right? Because you've already done all of that work to get them into the curriculum system. I don't want you to have to repeat all of that work. And you shouldn't have to be worried that, oh crap, that's not up to date, okay? We should be able to utilize systems we have in place to make sure that you don't have to repeat that work. Okay, so where are we? Right now on the screen, SLO number 1, to critically evaluate a delivered speech. Okay? If I click the edit button in this particular environment, obviously I can change the name, I can name it different things, I can actually describe this outcome. You can describe the outcome, what the expectation is, kind of thing. You can put more info in here. Again, I can change the type of rating, right? Highest score, most recent score, decaying average. You can set the different levels of the matrix. All right, so let's say that we get all this done. All right. Now, I'm going to go into a fake shell that I have for FlexDay. All right. So I'm in my fake shell, and I've actually already established a couple of exams. You'll notice in this shell, right, there's an outcomes button. And in this particular case, if you haven't actually inserted any outcomes into it, you're not going to see anything here, right? So, you can create your own outcomes within your particular course. Now, I'm going to probably want to, I won't understand why you would want to do that if they weren't already in your course outline of record, but you might want to, and you can. Right? Call it whatever you like. Another outcome, for instance. Right? And then again, you can choose the method by which you actually do the evaluation. I'm just going to say highest score. I'm going to leave everything else the same. And so you could go through that. You could actually go in and group them. Right? So you could create groups of outcomes if you wanted to. Again, having a conversation. Please understand me, I'm not trying to tell you all how to do any of this from each of your, I'm just giving you an opportunity to see what might be possible. And then you all need to go in and have a conversation with discipline faculty in your area and kind of decide, how do we want to do this? If you're not already having conversations about the way in which you're assessing outcomes for your courses, please start. Okay, please start. Okay? We need to do these things. These are very important parts of what we do institutionally. They have accreditation impacts, obviously. But in order for us to be effective and utilize our resources appropriately, we need to understand whether or not we're effectively teaching our students, and how do we show that? And please don't tell me grades, okay? That is definitely not the way in which you can you can tell me effectively that a student has skills, those skills, right? It's just not enough. Right? Now, there'll be lots of people who want to argue with me about that. They think grades are sufficient to do that. I'm asking you to reconsider that concept and dig a little deeper into what this actually is. Right? Now, I'm not telling you how to do it. Please don't misunderstand. All right, I'm going to go into actually into the overall assignments area. And so I actually created a couple of assignments here. I created a midterm and I created a final exam. So I'm going to go ahead and into the midterm area. Now, if you don't know how to do this part of it, right, to actually create an exam within the system, there's a whole bunch of workshops inside of the faculty hub that will tell you how to do it, but it's pretty straightforward, right? You can come over here to the assignment area. I click the assignment, I give it a name, right? In this case, I want to make an exam. I can set points, I can do all of this other stuff associated with it, right? I'm going to hit save. And automatically, you're going to see this button right here. See this button called Rubric? Okay. As soon as I create that exam, that assignment, it's going to give you this. The basis on which you do the actual evaluation of that assignment is really a rubric. You may not realize it, but obviously, somewhere in your head, you're saying, oh, that's correct, or that's not, or that's pretty close to being correct, and so I'm going to give you partial credit for it. Right? You already have a rubric. You're already doing it. Okay. What I'm asking you to do at this point is to convey what that rubric is to your students. Let them know how it is you're evaluating them. Right? What is the criterion by which I'm evaluating? And please don't tell me, did you get it correct or not? Okay, because I don't think anybody probably grades strictly on like a yes or no kind of thing, right? Right? It's either right or it's wrong. Right? Some of you might be doing it that way. Right? But again, you probably should be telling your students if that's the case. All right, so let me just say, I just created this new assignment. I'm going to click Rubric. Now, I have an option of creating a brand new rubric for myself, right? Or I can go find a rubric. So if I've already established a rubric in other ones, I can actually go here and say, find a rubric, and you'll see that there are rubrics that are listed. So in this case, I'm going to click the FlexDay VPI. I'm going to click the COM1. And you can see here, let me just make this bigger. You can see, right, this was a rubric that was established based upon those outcomes. And I can say, use this rubric. And there it is. Now I put into my assignment what the actual rubric is. And that rubric, again, is based upon these SLOs, or these outcomes. And so it gives me a criterion by which I'm going to be basing whether or not the student actually obtained or got the skills that I'm asking them to get. Questions? Anything? Don't argue with me about grades. Okay. Well, we can have that offline. I can argue with you all day long about grades as an assessment tool. Nothing so far? Donna Chandler, good to see your face. Steve, did you have a question? Steve Longo, did you have a question? I thought I saw you wanting to ask a question, Steve. My apologies. Okay. Scott's got his hand raised. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, so your test is 100 points. And so I guess if they get 100 points, they get 5 points. How are you tying those in?
So again, that's for you to decide. This is what Enrique was talking about before, where many people are saying, well, don't I have to make my rubric match my total points, for instance? the total points, I'm assuming here, and I could be wrong, Scott, but the whole exam is not an assessment of a particular skill, right? And so in this particular case, if all I'm wanting to see is whether or not a student has met this particular outcome, which is to organize, develop, and deliver an effective speech. If the whole exam is an example of or a display of that, then 5 points, right? It exceeds the expectation. But in most cases, I assume, I think this is probably the case, that you have maybe questions strewn throughout an exam that might help you to understand whether or not the student has that particular skill. Right? So does that make sense, Scott, from that perspective? Right? So yeah, that's been a thing that like everyone says, well, why don't I just make this the COM 1 100 points for exceeds expectation? And that's, you could do that if you'd like. Right? You could do it that way if you wanted to. But go ahead, Tiffany. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So I wanted to ask to clarify, because I think it was stated earlier by Enrique that these rubrics can be no points. Is that right? So if I give an in-person test, but then I just want to make note here in Canvas when I record their score, whether they've met an SLO, that I can do that under a rubric that does not have points. So I've already given them the points they've earned on the test overall, but maybe 1 or 2 questions was a specific SLO that I needed to report.
Yes, because
Yes. Go,
Enrique.
Don, can you go back?
Go ahead.
Can you go back one slide? Can you go back? So, where you have the point system there? No.
you want it in the rubric.
In the rubric, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Hold on a second. It's at this level. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
there. Yeah, media recording students association.
No, I'm not.
no,
That's the
no,
assignment.
that's the
Sorry,
assignment.
I clicked the wrong one. Hold on. I edit this one.
There. So to answer Tiffany, it's up to you. And so if you don't want to grade on the points, you want to, you can just do exceed expectation. They met the expectation. They do not meet the expectation. Whatever you want to do, you can choose the verbiage, or if you want to use the point system, you really have to click and use this rubric for this assignment for grading. But if you don't want it but that rubric will not compute and grade your scores and points. Suppose I'm just I want them to learn this SLO, but I don't want any points. I just want to make sure if they met the expectation or whatever you want to do. It is up to you. It is open. And keep in mind, if you're lost or whatever, just call me. I will, and I'm constantly assisting faculty with that.
But remember that there's a difference between the score on the exam and the assessment of whether or not they met the outcome, right? So there's really kind of 2 different things there. It's not going to add 10 points in if they got both exceeds. It's not going to add 10 points to it, right? So you'll have a score, let's say, of a 90 for that student, but you felt based upon their performance that they exceeded expectation in both of those outcomes, then you can give them grace. Now I'm going to show you how to use the grader in just a second associated with that, okay? All right, so let me click. Go ahead, Craig, you had a question?
Okay, so first of all, forgive me, I'm on my iPad. I couldn't get a hat to fit my head, but I do have the beanie with the propeller on it. So
Yes,
here's
nice.
my question for you. We're doing a lot of project-based things, and we use rubrics, or at least I should say I use rubrics. They're so involved, oh my gosh, and how you score this thing. Can I have 2 rubrics for an assignment? One to do the SLOs, ungraded, and one that is really involved for the grading of the project?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, you can add more than 1 rubric to an assignment.
Craig, I didn't try that, but
If that works, then I'm good to go.
it's not the right one. I went to the editor of the other one.
Don,
Yeah, go ahead, Enrique.
thank you. Yes, Greg, you can. You have to duplicate the same rubric, and then that's how you do it. You duplicate the same rubric.
I would think that I'd make an SLO rubric.
Hold on a second. Let's see if we can make. I can make it work right now. I hadn't tried it that way. No, it didn't. It replaced it.
Yeah, like I said, I've got tons of really involved rubrics already.
Well, if you don't wish to assign that to a particular assignment, you don't have to.
Oh, but I'd love
Yeah,
to.
it would make more sense. And there's probably a way, Craig. Let me investigate, okay, and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because
There's probably a way to do it.
That would really make life easier. Sorry about the beanie with the propeller. I'll shut up.
No issues, no issues.
Don?
I'd say, Don, I think you can actually add elements to a rubric that are for the SLOs. So you would just say, oh, this is my web project 3. You have your detailed SLO, and then you just have additional lines at the bottom. If you want to judge the SLOs separately rather than actually find elements in your existing SLO, or not SLOs, your existing rubric that would match the SLOs.
So you can do it like this. You could, right? Here's your SLOs, and then your more extensive rubric associated with that. The problem, I think, in this particular case is to say there are certain criteria that I want to use in terms of evaluating the actual exam, right? So you can't say only, well, these 5 items are going to be used to evaluate the exam, and then only these 2 are going to be used to evaluate the outcome, right? Whether or not they've achieved the outcome. So I think you'd have to have them separate from that perspective, but you can add criterion here. I'm just adding, a bunch more into that same one. And I can change the overall ratings. We could add additional ratings. We can change the points on the rating, right? It could be 100 here. We can add additional ones in here, right? So you see, I'm just adding additional ratings here, right here, right here, right here. For this one, I called another one. You can establish a range. So if you wanted from 5 to greater than 3 is full marks, 3 greater than 0 is this, and 0 is no marks. So you can establish ranges as well. Who was first, Steve or Richard?
I'm unsure. I can go only because I'm bouncing off of Craig's question. Craig, I can give you at least an alternative. So everything that Don says you can do by just adding criterion. But at least how I do it is, and I guess this is general for everyone, I typically do a 4-point rubric no matter what, and at least 4 categories. I think Don had said mastery is 1, or some people call it advanced. Then you go for proficient, and then you can go for below, like doesn't meet standards, and then like sufficiently doesn't meet standards kind of thing. But in terms of being able to add, I guess, 2 criteria, or at least more or less 2 standards or 2 SLOs, what you do, or at least what I've done, is that you kind of separate them. So right now, if you were to look at the screen, I would have, let's say, just these 2 categories that we see right now that are, or sorry, the 3 categories, 5 points, 5 points, 5 points. I would leave them all the same. So for me, all 4 points. And then I would balance them out in terms of all the criteria that you need to fit for 1 SLO. And then right under that, then I actually have whether you are going to assess like 4 or 5 different things for your other SLO. Then you can actually do the same thing, but then you still make sure it's a multiplied factor of 4. So let's say if you wanted it to be, you were testing for, let's say photography, a photo project, you have composition. And then let's say if you had editing, let's say, so one of them is based off of the camera and one of them is based off of, let's say, editing for the computer stuff. You can still do a 4-point rubric or whatever rubric for the top half. And then the bottom half, you still do the same thing, but you just have different criteria. The thing is, if you want it to be a 50-50 split, you have to make sure that the points equal out. So you would have like, right now we have sets of 3, 5 points, 5 points, 5 points. It'd be the same thing that you need a mirror for the other side. Because then if you don't do it that way, then you'll have an imbalance that technically their photo skills might be worth more point-wise in terms of their overall grade to their editing, but you really wanted it to be equal. So what I do is I would just have 3 categories of, let's say, photo, 5 points, 5 points, 5 points, or for me, 4. And then for editing, I would do the same thing for 3 categories of 4 points, 4 points, 4 points. And then you can assess certain things. You can do like cleanliness, you can do, lighting, and then you can do color. You can kind of balance all those things out. And that's just based off of the criteria that you kind of make for your rubric. I hope that helps. And then if you want it to be worth more, last thing, if you want it to be worth more, then you can then make it, let's say if I wanted editing to be more, because this unit's more about editing than about using a camera, then you can make them 8 points. So you can have 8 points, 8 points, 8 points, and then the other ones are only worth 4. And you can kind of manage it out, and then you just kind of do the math and see which one has more percentage over the other. And that's how I've been able to work around the whole one rubric thing.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. I appreciate, for those who've been doing this and really use this all the time, again, thank you. Reach out to your colleagues on that. In your divisions, you probably should be having these conversations. There's a bunch of questions that are in the chat, but also Richard and then Debay.
Hi, I'm a little new to Canvas. This will be my second year teaching on Canvas. Is it a requirement that we have rubric for all of our assessments?
No.
No, but is it good teaching practice, do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
And let me point out a couple things that people have said in the chat as well. You all establish what your outcomes are. Okay, so whether or not for some of you they may not be detailed enough. Like if you don't think comms are enough, you may all have more. I'm going to suggest to you that you don't go crazy and put in 12 to 14 outcomes. You're going to have a hell of a time measuring them, and given that we need to measure them at least once every cycle, it's gonna be crazy for you. So somewhere between 2 and maybe 4 sounds about like kind of an appropriate level. Enrique, what do you think on that? 2 to 4 on outcomes.
It's 1 or 3.
1 to 3. Okay, so even less than what I said. Now the other part of this is this. Hold on one second. I'll get to some other stuff here that's going on. I think it's important that you inform your students as to how you're evaluating them. Right? And so in the case of these rubrics that I built, I didn't do any work here. Okay? You could be much more detailed in the way in which you're actually going to evaluate them. Right? So you could put in more this criteria, for instance, when I go to edit the information and I want to add a criterion, okay, I can put in whatever description I want for how I'm going to evaluate this. Right? So you can be as detailed as you'd like in telling your students, here's the way I'm going to actually assess you, so they understand what the expectation is, right? And so, we can do this kind of stuff, and you'll notice here, right, I just put a bunch of language in there, or letters. You could tell them, right? And so here's the nice thing. When they go to look at the assignment, they see the rubric. I haven't gotten there yet, but I'll show you that in just a second. Debay, I'm sorry. Did I say it right, Debay? Go ahead and unmute yourself there.
Actually, you read my mind and you pretty much answered my question just right now. My question was regarding the criteria and the long description, which is actually, for example, when you say 5 point, which is exceed expectation, and then you give them the long description of what this exceed expectation is. So that's the way I was doing it, and when I use the rubric. So yeah, pretty much you answered it, I guess.
Great, good, thank you.
Yeah.
So again, you don't have to have rubrics, but it is a good way for you also to relay expectation to your student, but also for you when you're looking at them. And so one of the things that I did as a faculty member is I would start out grading, right? And I would grade, and then I'd get to the end, and then I'd go back and I'd look at the last paper and the first one, and I'd say, okay, am I similar in my approach? Or have I gotten so damn tired by the time I finished grading 45 papers that I was missing certain things, or I just didn't care anymore, right? And then I would go back and say, okay, you're too hard on the first 5 people on this particular thing, so I made a change to it, right? So it was similar across all of them. But it's because I didn't have a standard that I'd established for the way that I was going to be grading that paper, and I was fresh at the beginning, and that was really tough. towards the end, I was getting tired. I wasn't so tough anymore, right? And, you know, I'm not saying that you all do that. In fact, I'm not saying none of you do that. That's what I did, right? And then I would go back and evaluate, reevaluate how I was actually grading them. So sometimes rubrics are a good practice for you to do. Right? All right. So let's see here. I wanted to show you. Okay, so let's go. All right, so here I'm in the rubrics area. It actually lists the various rubrics that are there. But let me show you from an assignment perspective, and I'll go to the final exam, right? And so this is my view, and if I look at it from a student's view, right? So I can start the assignment, and in this particular case, you know, it has the information that I, you know, need to submit. I'm going to go to the one that I already did. Okay. Hold on a second here. Go back one more. And midterm. I think I actually, okay, here we go. So as this is like a fake student or whatever, but on the midterm, when they went in, you can see that the criteria is there, right? Because I added it. Students can view the Canvas grading. Yes, before they actually can. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Thank you, Tiffany. Right. So they can see this before they actually start. Now, I already made an attempt on this one as kind of a demonstration to it, because I want to show you what it looks like from a grade perspective. They obviously would not see a new attempt unless I allowed them to do it more than once. Right. This doesn't, you know, it's not common, but let's say you give them an assignment and you tell them you can submit it twice. Right, and maybe it's some kind of graded thing, or they can have unlimited attempts, kind of deal, whatever. So they submitted it, and you can see here it was submitted and when it was submitted, right? The details on it. It's actually a downloaded document. I'm going to show you in 1 second here. Right? So that's from the student perspective, right? Then on my side of it, when I go to the grades, right, and I click on this student, you can see there was a midterm here. If I go to the speed grader, here was the assignment. Here's what the student turned into me. You can see here's the downloaded file. Let me widen this real quick here. Come on. There we go. All right. If I click view rubric, right in while I'm actually doing the evaluation of it, the rubric is there. And so here's what's also cool in this, right? So this happened to be sample scheduling procedures, some document that we produced and I uploaded real quick. But you can see my criteria. And let's say that the organizing, developing, and deliver effective speech, and they met expectation. I can either click right here and the points show up, or I can go over here and put the points in. So let's say this one, right? Then I hit save. Right. Now, notice here, the grade out of 100. That's separate from the assessment of the outcome. Well, I'm gonna give this guy 100. Right? So now I've gotten that grade in for that particular student. Right? And then again, if I go back into the grades area, you see there's the, right, for that particular student. If I click test student, I can come over here and I get an analysis of, right? We can go look at the grades or the analytics, how often they've been in the class, all of these kinds of things. This kind of again, that's a high overview. We're at 151. Let me go back into this and go back to here. And I'll go to like final exam. Okay. So again, in this particular case, I didn't establish one for this one. If I click here, again, I can go and create my own. I can go grab one. I can go find an outcome. So again, you see I had added this one, and these two were added from me adding them from the rubric before. So again, and then I can delete. See the little trash can? It just gets rid of that one. Pretty straightforward stuff.
Don.
Yeah.
So in other words, this is a great tool to know your disaggregated data, know where your students are. If you're using assignment 1, you have 5 assignments, and then it gives the analysis or statistics of what happened with assignment 1. If you have 35 students, 45 students, now, and you choose that grading system, the grading point system, it will give you an analysis. And now you can see, oh, Enrique got the first assignment, he got 80 points out of whatever, or he did not exceed on exam 1 or assignment 1, whatever. But this is a great tool to give you that those analysis. And when I say analysis, it's more of a disaggregate data. If you're really interested about what's really happening in your classrooms, and especially what's really happening with your students.
Okay, so let's see if there are any other questions. Students can view the Canvas. Thank you again, Tiffany. Rubrics help me. Grading, Marianne, thank you. 4-point rubric, general rubric is not one shoe fits all solution. I would create several. Yeah, thank you, Steve. That's true. You probably need to have different rubrics based upon assignments as well. Those that are maybe more demonstrative in nature as opposed to those that are repeating the information. How is a generic rubric helpful for students? It's well, Nancy, I would suggest it is not very helpful to have a general rubric, but one that is more specific as to how you're going to evaluate the students. So thank you. Yeah, once you've actually established a rubric and you've actually graded someone with that rubric, you can't change that rubric. It'll tell you you already have you've already used this rubric for to grade with. Let's see, do I see any others? All right, any other questions? I got another. You can also put in a 4 if you believe it fell between 2 to meet 3 when I find myself doing this. Yeah, that's great. All right, cool. All right, I don't see any other hands up. Again, thank you for participating today. This is just, again, a big overview of the rubrics and the idea, and lots of faculty are already using these. I am by no means an expert in any of this stuff. Seek out your colleagues who are using it. Steve had some great ideas. Disciplined faculty should get together and kind of talk about how you can use these. Again, being transparent, setting expectations for your students. What I was trying to show you today is that there are ways for us to think about integrating these things, right? So that we're building upon CSLO, PSLO, ISLO, Curricunet, course outlines, bringing them together, reporting this information out, using this as part of your program review process. My theme is on this idea of integration and collaboration between different systems and making it easier for us to critically evaluate how we are doing.
Would you like to speak about Curricunet, the module, the SLO module, and what's happening in the future?
Well, just as let me stop this share because I think we can be done with this stuff here. Stop the share. Okay. As Enrique mentioned, we are working this fall. Enrique and I are going to be going through the SLO module within Curricunet, starting to get that developed. Then we'll be having some conversations with the SLO committee, because I believe it's still in place. Is that right, Enrique? The SLO committee is still in place?
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay. So we'll be having some conversations with the SLO committee. We're hoping by the spring of 22, spring of 22, that we'll have something for people to start using and working through. And then maybe like a full-on blown fall of 22, ready to go, hit the ground running kind of thing. So it'll take us a while to get through it. We're going to need to develop training. We're going to have to talk about how this integration works we'll do some testing on how, if you did assessments in Canvas, that information is going to be pulled out and put into Curricunet so that we can report on those Then we'll talk about integrating that into the program review templates so that you're not having to go figure out or pull in information. You can run a report or you can pull info directly from your SLO module and put it into your program review module. All right, so it makes it your job easier in meeting these requirements from a reporting perspective. Go ahead.
And think of the curriculum database as a one-stop shop. So you have your curriculum module, you have your program review module, you have your SLO module, and they'll all be communicating. So it's a one-stop shop. But at this point right now for the SLO module, it's business as usual. The same documents until we get the system in place, like Don mentioned before. So just for right now, if you need any assistance, please contact me. I'm here to help you and assist you in any way you can.
Thank you all. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you all very much. Call me if you need any assistance, please. I'm here to help you.
Bye.
Thank you.